I'm Krista Shields from Boone REMC in Lebanon, Indiana. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
This podcast is sponsored by Today's Power, Inc., who partners with electric cooperatives to bring leading technologies such as solar, storage, and EV charging systems to provide lower costs and improve the quality of life of their members.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. NRECA's Access Project stands for Achieving Cooperative Community Equitable Solar Sources. It's a 3-year initiative being funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and its aim is bringing the benefits of solar power into low and moderate income, or LMI, communities. NRECA has partnered with 7 member co-ops across the country to deploy solar projects that help LMI members with the intent to share the lessons they learn and help other co-ops do the same. We're joined today by Keith Dennis. He's NRECA's Vice President for Consumer and Member Engagement, and Deb Roepke. She's the Access Project's Principal Investigator and Technical Advisor. Later, we'll hear from Nick Shumaker. He works at Oklahoma Electric Cooperative, which is one of the 7 partner co-ops in Access, and they have a solar project involving their local school system. Deb, Keith, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Glad to be here.
All right, so Keith, as the NRECA sort of administrator of the Access Project, why don't you give us an overview of what it is, how did it come about, when did it start, and what are its goals?
Sure. Well, the Access Project itself is a DOE solar office project that explores how to extend the benefits of solar to low to moderate income households. And it really looks at how to design the financial mechanisms around bringing solar to populations that just don't have as much money. While solar prices are falling, it's still not easy to make sure that communities that don't have a lot of access to capital are able to, see the benefits of solar. And it's something that our membership is really interested in exploring. We really don't, as a community, want to have any technology accessible to only one part of a community but not another. So the idea here is to sort of look at that issue, and we were able to partner with the Department of Energy on this to have a grant-funded opportunity.
That's great. So Deb, tell us about your role in this project. How are you working with DOE? How are you working with our partner co-ops?
So my role is really to bring the players together, to connect these co-ops with shared interests to one another, and connect them to industry experts who are also working in this space and want to work more with co-ops because they recognize that co-ops are serving the vast majority, most of the counties in the U.S. with persistent poverty. And so, bringing all of these players together to implement initiatives for which best practices don't yet exist.
That's great. And maybe both of you can sort of give us a sense of why a project like this is necessary. What does a community gain by leveling out access to renewables?
I think there's a lot of things going on. And of course, our members are about improving quality of life. And when there is a tool that can provide a certain service, there's just an interest in making sure that that's accessible to everyone. Just like we wouldn't want some homes in a community to not have power. If somebody really desires a certain service that we offer, we generally want to see if we can do that as long as it's not, sort of on somebody else's back.
Yeah, and I would just, add to what Keith was saying there. I think it's a positive opportunity versus unpaid bills for co-ops to engage with, their members who are struggling to pay their bills, right? Solar can kind of be the starting point for energy efficiency and beneficial electrification and a way to talk to them about on-bill financing or pays or other opportunities for making their home more comfortable, for helping them with their energy bills in that more sort of comprehensive way. The other thing that's really interesting, and I think one of the conversations that we've had with the stakeholders is it's not about charity. It's really about making the whole system more healthy. 30% of LIHEAP dollars. So LIHEAP dollars are the low-income heating and energy assistance program that people have access to when they can't pay their electric bills. But 30% of those assistance dollars literally go right out the window because of people's energy inefficient homes, right? They're low-income folks, so they're in low-income housing that isn't as energy efficient as other housing. And so addressing the most energy inefficient housing can benefit both the member and the membership, both technically and financially.
And that's a great segue to my next question. And Deb, you mentioned PAYS, and that's an acronym for Pay As You Save. Keith, when most people think about solar power, they're either thinking about these giant kind of grid-level solar projects that are utility scale, or they're thinking about residential rooftop. But the Access Project is looking at more creative ways and different ways to kind of get at this issue and get into these communities that might not otherwise be served. Tell us about some of the things that you're doing that go beyond just the normal solar installation type thing.
Sure. Well, I think even just starting out working with government grants is one way to figure out this business model. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be a sustainable business model that we need to see. And through this, we're looking at things like pay as you save and on-bill financing. But also, there's a whole community out there, for instance, that's really interested in philanthropy and investing in a cleaner energy future, they'll call it, where there might be folks interested in kind of coming in and helping some of this. There's also a lot of work around power purchase agreements, figuring out how a community can buy something, perhaps with certain cost structure, and use that and the savings there on different aspects of grid services to pay for this. Local partners with municipalities like school districts, if there can be some solar panels on school districts, using those renewable energy credits to generate some income. And as Deb mentioned, there's energy efficiency programs that once folks are involved, there is a kind of customer acquisition cost. And if somebody's involved in the solar, can we also tighten up their home and have a package with energy efficiency and solar energy that creates enough financial benefit to provide some of the financing for it. There's really quite a few different models that are being explored to figure out how do you solve this specific issue.
And so, Deb, you're working fairly closely with the partner co-ops. Maybe you can just kind of run down who those co-ops are and maybe call out a couple of the interesting projects that sort of hit on some of the things that Keith was just talking about.
Well, and we are blessed with great diversity in the co-ops that are on this project. All of these projects are very different from one another. And that means that we've got a real diversity in terms of what we're able to draw from. We've got a couple of co-ops that are these solar and solar plus storage projects for them. In addition to working with their low-income members, they're also trying to solve some technical issues. They're transmission limited. One of them, Orcas, is an island community. And so they've got some specific challenges there. Anza Electric is way out on the end of a single radial feed, and staying within the capacity that they have today, doing this local generation really improves their ability to keep their costs down long term. So those are a couple of things. That's on the technical end. You know, a couple of the co-ops are working with their tribal communities. There's a lot of interest in that at the federal level as well. How do we work with tribal communities to help them have access to renewable energy? And then we've got a couple of co-ops that are really looking at the PAYS model, and they may be using that already for their energy efficiency programs, and they're looking at how do we convert this to incorporate solar. And then as Keith mentioned, Oklahoma Electric Cooperative is working with their local school district. And then Roanoke, they're doing some really innovative work to be very comprehensive, sort of integrating philanthropic partners and their community action partner, and those community action partnerships manage the LIHEAP and weatherization assistance programs, and also working with African American landowners who, because of some unclear property rights in the past, have been vulnerable. And as the co-op is helping to site projects on their land, they're also clearing up these land issues and property rights issues.
Talk about what a typical co-op partnership looks like, even knowing that these are very different projects and they're very different co-ops in different areas. What does a partnership look like? What do we ask of the co-op? What do we provide to them? What does DOE offer?
You know, I think the key for us is really understanding what does the co-op want, and then let's figure out where the interests align, right? So the first step for us is really coming up with a work plan that is guided specifically by the co-op. What do you want to do? What are your goals? What are you hoping to achieve? And then figuring out, okay, now where do our interests align with the Department of Energy, and hooking those things together, right? So they develop a work plan, and then they participate in sessions. Some of those sessions are specific to the project team, which is the co-ops, CoBank, CFC, and Grid Alternatives. And then sometimes it's more broad, right? So we have a stakeholder group for this particular project where we've invited in other agencies that are working in this space. And so that's sometimes advocacy groups. There are other financial institutions such as community development banks and green banks, credit unions, where we've invited them into the conversation And those discussions have been really interesting. People have been really engaged, really willing to share what they know, and also really interested in working with the co-ops.
One thing that I'll just add is that in addition to the specific co-ops that we're working with on this, there's a whole community that's around this. And these folks get up on the stage at our meetings and talk about what they're doing. We have an online community where folks are sharing ideas. It really inspires folks to look at this issue. We haven't discussed it, but this specific project is a DOE grant. It's part of a larger Energy Access for All project that really has been spearheaded by Adora Ifbai, who's done an excellent job. These projects, even with a grant, it takes several years for these to come to fruition. So you can imagine that this has been a labor of love for many years. And these particular co-ops are able to participate in this particular government grant, at this time.
Yeah, and I sort of suspect we have a reputation in the federal government as being a good conduit for a really large constituency. And the fact that co-ops share so openly and so regularly is such a great way to kind of get at a broad issue through a single kind of point of entry. This project's a year old now. Are there any deliverables so far? Are there some kind of lessons learned that co-ops can access at this point, or is that farther down the line?
Yeah, so we have a number of things that are available on the website. And those include some case studies where we talk about the co-ops that are working with the tribal communities. We did some work with PNNL, Pacific Northwest National Lab, that is looking at the value of solar and the pluses and minuses, specifically working with Orca's electric co-op, Opalco, around so how do we factor in what we gain from, not having to do the transmission for this power to have this here locally? What are the benefits and costs, and how do we balance that all out, right? So the PNNL work is quite interesting, and that's available. And there are some case studies, and we have a bunch of stuff coming. The other thing that we did, and there's probably a series of articles coming out over the next 6 months, is CoBank helped us, and CFC participated in this as well. We took a comprehensive look at the financial mechanisms that are available to co-ops at this time, and really objectively looked at, what makes sense for co-ops? Do they need additional financial mechanisms given that, they have pretty good access to low-cost capital? I think there are some specific cases where it may make sense for co-ops to work with, like a community development bank, particularly if they feel like they don't have the in-house capacity or expertise to run an on-bill financing program. So that document, that's a big 5-chapter document that we are working on for DOE's purposes, but we're going to release it in smaller, more digestible chunks for the co-op community.
Okay, so on this contract, there's a couple more years to go. What's the plan for going forward? Are you going to invite more partner co-ops in? What's up for the next couple of years?
So the participating co-ops have identified a couple of priority areas around which we have formed working groups. And the co-ops are participating in those, and we're drawing in expertise from the industry based on particular focus and subject. And so we're focused on those working groups, and co-ops will be implementing their projects. So year 3 will really be more about measuring, right? Year 2 is about, okay, let's get these projects in place, let's get the programs in place. And then year 3 is about, are we really impacting our low-income members, and what's the benefit for them, and can we quantify that? And so measuring that progress.
And the Biden administration just came out with this massive infrastructure plan, which has a lot of kind of clean energy aspects to it. I wondered, it's early days. All this stuff has to be getting written into legislation. But do either of you see this as an opportunity for this particular program and this particular issue?
Well, I think for this issue, you're going to see something. There's billions of dollars coming out for energy programs, and there's an equity component to it. There is an executive order out there that talks about reaching disadvantaged communities, many that are in rural areas. You could see a little bit of a synergy there.
And I would just add, Scott, one of the things that we're watching closely is what happens with the tax credit. There's been an effort to make it easier for nonprofits and co-ops in particular to access that tax credit with a direct payment rather than a tax credit. I know NRECA has been active in that discussion, and so we're following that, and definitely we'll keep co-ops up to date on that, as that would have a big impact on these projects as well.
That's great. This is a really fascinating project, and I can't wait to see what happens over the next couple of years, because I think co-ops are just so well placed to do these types of things, and you guys are doing great work. So Deb and Keith, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and we'll catch up with you again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Next, we'll hear about an innovative access project in Oklahoma, but first, let's pause for a brief word from our sponsor.
NRECA's Along Those Lines podcast is sponsored by Today's Power, Inc., who would like to share how proud they are to work with forward-thinking cooperatives like the Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas and those participating in the Kansas Cooperative SunPower program, which enables cooperatives in eastern Kansas to take advantage of low-cost group purchasing. You can read more about this cooperative offering on their blog at todayspower.com.
I'm Wayne Price from the Nebraska Rural Electric Association in Lincoln, Nebraska. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. Nick Shumaker is the manager of system engineering at Oklahoma Electric Cooperative in Norman, Oklahoma. They recently finished a project where they partnered with Norman Public Schools on a 2-megawatt solar array that combines renewable energy with learning opportunities and new streams of revenue for the school district. Nick, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Scott. I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, so give us a rundown on OEC's project as part of Access.
Sure. So with Access, we're trying to find ways to bring solar to underserved members of our community. And for us, kind of our way of doing that was partnering with the local school district. So trying to find ways to find added value from the solar maybe that we're already building. We had a much smaller project as kind of an R&D to learn about solar that we had online in 2017. And one of the things that we learned from it, one, it is financially viable if we build it in the way that we're building it. And two, the community in Oklahoma and in Norman especially was ecstatic to have it, especially from the educational standpoint. We ended up giving tours to over 1,000 people in the community over the last couple of years, and tours were not part of the design at all. So, that's kind of us responding to the community. So we're building this new project that we're going to be talking about today, specifically to be part of the community, to have educational parts put in it, and then also to support our local school districts financially.
Tell us about how this particular project, the one involving the Norman School District, is responsive to that mission of the Access Project.
Sure. So 50% of students that go to Norman Public Schools are on free or reduced meals. These are people in households that would not normally have access to solar at their house. Solar is coming down in price, but it's still, for many people, the price of a brand new car. And that's out of reach for most working parents in the community. So this is a way that we can really reach out to a large amount of people because, the entire community goes to school for the most part. And they can start to have these touch points with renewable energy, but then also receive the benefits of that renewable energy.
I know you said the co-op is already involved with solar projects. Had you been hearing from your community members, some of the LMI members in your community saying, we'd like to have access to this, but we need some help?
Yes, exactly. It's just very expensive to do on your own. And it's a big engineering construction project. I mean, even if you can afford it, it's a lot of work to do, and with as busy as people have been, especially over the last year, it's impractical that a lot of people are going to go down that route. So while the utility doing it, we can get the bonus of being able to put the project where it makes the most financial sense for us, and the most financial sense for us, is good for the membership. That's how cooperatives work. But we can kind of get the cost savings of doing a larger project. We have engineers on staff. We can get better pricing by doing bulk purchases. So I think it adds a lot of efficiency to the project overall. And now all of that renewable energy is going to go to our members. It all gets served here locally, so they get the benefits. The school district will get a steady stream of guaranteed revenue. So all of the students who go there, that's an extra funding that the schools are going to have. And then the added bonus of having it, you can come out physically to a live power plant that's serving your community and learn about renewable energy. We have a number of things that we're going to be working on for STEM degrees, working with the University of Oklahoma, the University of Tulsa, and Oklahoma State University, as well as some of the local technology schools. So really trying to hit all the different educational routes that people can go through, because all of those routes are going to end up in, or can end up in, renewable energy, utilities, cooperatives. We need people at all different levels. And I think that for a lot of people, and especially younger students, they don't see that clear pathway of how the things that they're learning and doing can result in physical manifestations in their community. And as a young engineer, I like to show them, hey, if you have a really good idea, you can make a direct impact on your community.
That's great. And something tells me that OEC probably would have been involved in a project like this, whether Access existed or not. But tell us a little bit about what made you decide to get involved in the Access project.
Yeah, so for us, we probably would have done the project at some level without Access. It's kind of what attracted it to us. We're actually the first cooperative in Access to have our solar project completely online. It's been generating electricity since December 31st, which was our original timelines that we set up pre-COVID. So we're pretty happy that we were able to meet that with all the craziness going on. But as far as, why join Access, what does that do for us? It really allows us to get connected, with NRECA, a bunch of great partners that they've set up for us, and then also other cooperatives who are doing very interesting parallel, but also very different projects. And being able to borrow from each other as we all kind of break new ground and try to find value enhancing ways of doing solar. Solar's getting to a point where anyone can kind of build it and get it online. That used to be the really hard part of it. If you're asking me, the project manager is still kind of hard. But how can we do these in creative ways that adds value to the local communities? When we have technical questions, we have technical partners now, we have marketing partners, we have educational partners. We're focusing particularly on education. So it's just this book of resources of passionate people about our project that we have access to. It's been great. It was really easy to join NRECA. Their entire staff is so great to work with and makes it really easy, not overbearing, but still somehow keeps everything pushing around at what seems like a breakneck pace.
Yeah. And one of the things, obviously, that Access intends to do is to take the information that all these different co-ops are kind of gathering as part of their projects and make it available. So far, your project's been online for about 4 months now. What are you seeing as some of the early indicators of what OEC's project is going to be able to contribute to this and how it's going to kind of inform the membership as a whole?
Sure. So I would consider we're entering phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 is getting the solar online, getting designed, permitted, online, generating electricity. So that's kind of what we're through. So we're kind of trying to provide the co-op perspective on how you do that, because like most co-ops, all the people here working on the project wear a multitude of hats, and there's a lot of things that you have to figure out very quickly, from contract work to permits to picking partners to interconnection. So that's kind of what we're bringing to the table right this second. The next part, though, is putting an educational center, starting to make those community ties, trying to find all those extra programs that kind of come off top of having that solar. And one of the ones we're really excited about, we're working with Grid Alternatives, which is one of the Access partners. We're discussing philanthropic ways of getting involved with the school, getting involved with other pillars of the community to try and find ways of generating things that are financially positive for the school.
Sort of philosophically, why is it important to do these kinds of things? Why do co-ops particularly kind of get attracted to these? But why is it important in more of a general sense?
The original thing that we're all focused on solar is it's renewable energy. It doesn't need fuel. The other huge benefit of solar is you can put it where you need it. Oklahoma Electric Cooperative can't put a coal plant somewhere. We can't afford $2 billion or the footprint or any of that stuff. It's just absolutely out of the question to do something like that, where now you can have energy that you can integrate within your community. And I think us and the other co-op leaders on the project have all found very different ways of responding to our particular community needs by kind of focusing on, all right, we have this technology. What are some unique ways that we can really leverage that and get additional value out of it? And I think that's the next thing that people are going to need to figure out, because if you look around the world, some of the more developing countries, they're not building their electric infrastructure the way that we built it, because the way that we designed it was based off of the technology that we had at the turn of the century. Technology changes, maybe you wouldn't solve that the same way today. So I think that's the big kind of philosophical thing that we're trying to figure out.
That's great. And what kind of feedback have you gotten so far?
Yeah, pretty much all positive feedback, which is interesting for a project of this magnitude. But no, it's been great. The teachers are really excited. The school board couldn't be, more thrilled about it. The tech schools, the universities, really trying to hold back the floodgates right now, because I still have a couple of things I'd like to finish before I have people on site, just because it's a post-construction project, all the cleanup and little things like that make it good for the public. But outside of that, the community in Oklahoma is very, very excited about it.
That's awesome. But Nick, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and best of luck with the project.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on here.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, Today's Power. If you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe, like, and share along those lines on your favorite podcast app. For more on this and other episodes, visit electric.coop. Until next time, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Lynn Salter from Carteret Craven Electric Cooperative in Newport, North Carolina. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.